I'm sick and tired of hearing about her emails.
Oh.
Well, have you heard that one?
Yeah, I remember that from the debate. Well, Hillary Clinton had her own version of that the other day with a person that asked her about her donations from the fossil fuel industry. I'm sick and tired of hearing about those donations.
I guess you can say those are the Angry Bird moments. Is that what we're?
Yeah, those are the. It hasn't been quite as glowing as the Republican discussions and debates and fanfare has been so far. But we do have our little moments of excitement. That's about it so far. So we're coming into Wisconsin, and by the time you see this, Wisconsin will be. Will have voted, and the votes will be cast, and the delegates will be apportioned, and so you know something we don't know. That'll be this not being Wednesday yet. This is Monday.
But it's not winner take all in Wisconsin. There's something tricky about that, right?
No. The Democrats do not have any winner take all primaries like the Republicans had. Florida was winner take all. Arizona was winner take all. Ohio was winner take all. Democrats have a more of a proportional system where you get delegates according to how you do in a caucus or a primary. But Wisconsin appears to be a little bit different, and it's a little bit complicated. And it says that Wisconsin has 96 total delegates going to the convention. That's a Democratic convention in Philadelphia. 86 of them are pledged, which means they are tied to primary votes. Delegate selection is a proportional system, which means district-level delegates are apportioned among top vote getters, of which there are only 2 now, among top vote getters by district, while at-large delegates are apportioned among top vote getters statewide by percentage of votes received above a certain threshold. Okay. Then it goes on to say that we have 57 congressional district delegates. That's 57 out of the 96. And I guess those go winner take all to the winner of that individual state congressional district. Okay, it says there are 10 pledged party leaders and elected officials. Those are known as, those are known. 10 unpledged party leaders and elected officials are referred to as superdelegates, and I'm sure some of Wisconsin's leaders and party officials have already weighed in, and
it's amazing, David, the way they complicate this.
Well, you know, we live in a world where most of our elected officials are attorneys, and most of the people that run our parties are attorneys, and there's nothing like a good complication to make an attorney happy.
But the bottom line is the winner gets the larger percentage of the delegates.
Yeah.
That's the key to the whole thing.
And it looks like, now you know the answer to this, of course, because you're looking at this on Wednesday, and everything's already happened. But it looks like Bernie Sanders is favored to win the Wisconsin primaries, to take more votes in the Wisconsin primaries. And to get into statistics, Nate Silver, who has a site called 538, the number is based on the number of Congress critters, right on down to vice president and president. It has House of Representatives members, it has which are 435. It has 100 senators, that's 535. It has the vice president, and it has the president. That adds up to 537. But somehow there's somebody else in the mix there. But he has 5 ways that he's looked at the primaries. And of course, back a year ago, it was a slam dunk for Hillary Clinton. She had a 60% lead because Bernie Sanders wasn't even in the race yet. But he looked at it 2 different ways. He has 2 different statistical analyses of the Wisconsin primary, as he's done in all the other primaries. And he's been fairly close on most of the primaries. Statistics don't lie. You can pretty much predict with a fair amount of certainty if you get enough of a sample, a large enough random sample of any group, you can fairly well predict how the larger sample is going to vote.
You're not talking about polls, are you?
Yeah, polling. And they generally poll.
Right.
Let's say if they poll 1,000 people and choose a fair representative sample of the electorate, they can get very close to predicting accurately on literally into the hundreds of thousands of voters with a sampling of about 1,000.
And the polls seem to indicate that Bernie is looking pretty good in Wisconsin.
Yeah, the two ways of looking at it are by the polls themselves. So he looks at other polls and gives them gravitas, gives them weight according to the sample they take and their methodology of taking the sample. And by that means, he has Bernie Sanders as a 70% likelihood to win Wisconsin.
That's pretty high.
Doesn't say by how much. It only says he has the 70% likelihood that he'll actually win the primary and 30% chance that Hillary Clinton will win.
Would you say those statistics are on a conservative side?
We'll only know that when you know that because you've seen it. You know what the results are, but we'll only know that on Wednesday. But as it shapes up now, we've got Hillary Clinton with a pledged delegate votes, and the media likes to always throw in the superdelegates as if it's all etched in stone, and no superdelegate ever changed their mind, which we know from 2008 they do, because they did in 2008. Clinton started out with a large chunk of superdelegates because she was the preordained favorite. Everybody thought she would be the candidate in 2008, and we know in retrospect that Senator Barack Obama became the candidate. And as he did better and better in the primaries and the caucuses, the superdelegates started to gravitate over to him from Hillary Clinton.
That's interesting, but the game is a bit different now. Mm-hmm. You have Bernie Sanders, he's been an independent. Mm-hmm. And superdelegates could use the excuse that he's not a total member of the Democratic Party.
He's not one of us.
Yes, they could rationalize not moving their votes, and if it's really close, and if a few of them decide that they don't want to move, that could sway the election toward the party candidate who may not necessarily be the candidate of the popular vote. Mm-hmm.
It's possible, but it's one of the things in life we learn that in life you control the things you can control, and the things you can't control you let go and let them happen the way they're going to happen.
But if you really analyze the situation and you are aware of the fact that rules could be changed, hours before the convention, the candidate is a party candidate. It's not a candidate of the people.
Well, I think it's safe to say I think Bernie Sanders makes the point that he's caucused with the Democrats in the House of Representatives and now in the Senate through his entire career. He's always caucused with the Democratic Party because you choose up sides when you go into meetings, when you go into the inside, the party representatives talk amongst themselves on how they're going to vote on a particular issue and debate that issue back and forth. And he's always been in the Democratic caucus when it comes to discussing issues.
And he is respected. Highly respected.
Absolutely.
His integrity has never been really questioned. So logically, if he has the popular vote, they should feel free to move in his direction in light of the fact that it looks like Hillary's got some baggage hanging over her head right now.
And I think, the baggage aside, because I think you made the point very aptly to begin the show about these emails. I don't think these emails add up to a hill of beans. I think, in fact, if anything, they probably give her a little bit more emotional energy from the electorate. People don't like the fact that they have a history, the Clintons themselves and Hillary Clinton as part of that team have a history of being beaten up.
What about this Comey investigation, the FBI? It seems as though they are really pushing hard. And they also have a witness who was given indemnity. So
I still think that that's something that how you perceive that depends largely on which side you're on. If you're on the side of Hillary Clinton, you're going to see it in a different light than if you're on the side of Bernie Sanders. I think you're going to see the things is not black and white, not two totally different situations, but you're going to see them as really, really important, perhaps, or really unimportant, probably. There's an element in there.
Now Conley is considered to be objective in the sense that he doesn't have any party allegiances. His allegiance is strictly to this code of justice.
Yeah, Justice Department is a neutral part of the federal government. It's under the executive, but we know from the Watergate days that the head of the Justice Department will, in fact, buck anyone in the seat of power, right up to the President of the United States, if they see it as being fitting.
So that's just one of those things that sort of loom in the background and may or may not create a significant impact on the current process.
I don't think so, and I think a lot of it is just the media dredging for a story, trying to find something to get a little traction with it. They can spend a little time talking about as they're wont to do, which is why Les Moonves, the president of CBS News, came right out and said that Donald Trump is the best thing that ever happened to CBS News. Why? Because Donald Trump is saying these outlandish things, and all CBS needs to do is start off with their news broadcast with mentioning his name and saying he said something outrageous, and the viewers hang in there. The viewers want to see it. The viewers want to know, what's that guy done now? And when that happens, advertising dollars go up because you have more people watching. They could charge more for advertising, and it's great financially for the networks. It stinks for the American people.
This is a very destructive rig that's infected the media, and I'll tell you why. Because the media is supposed to be the watchdog for the people.
Absolutely.
The media is supposed to be giving the people the information they need in order to make intelligent voting decisions.
Absolutely.
Democracy requires an enlightened, vibrant electorate. They have to get their information from an objective, intelligent source. If all of a sudden they are being indoctrinated with reality TV, which is truly entertainment, okay? And if they're being diverted from their education by superficial entertainment, this is going to be reflected in the election. And unless we have an intelligent and vibrant electorate, democracy, as we believe, should be the political system of the country, is simply going to deteriorate. It's simply going to wind up in the hands of those, that are controlling the industries, controlling the politicians, controlling the media, and ultimately controlling the people themselves, because their election process is nothing but a sham.
Very good point. And I've thrown this back and forth in my mind's eye for a decade or more. you have these charges that fly back and forth. You hear first of all, it was is conservatives in America began branding the liberal news media in order to get a little leverage. I think in order to get a little leverage on the media, in order to get them backing, get them on their heels so they could get a more conservative perspective out of them, just to avoid the charge. And you have, on the other side, you have people that look at Fox News, for instance, other media outlets like Breitbart. There are a lot of them, but Fox is the most prominent one, and make the charge of conservative bias, the right-wing bias of Fox News and some other media outlets. And the one that they hold up in the most contempt from the right-wing side is MSNBC. I don't think it's a conservative news media. I don't think it's a liberal news media. I think it's a corporate news media. And I think that's the common denominator amongst all of them. And the source of the problem, because they all are looking for a story. They're all looking for an exciting story to generate advertising dollars.
Corporate,
absolutely.
Okay, so it's not political.
No, it's dollars and cents.
So when you say Fox, right-wing, conservative, that's not true. In reality, it's money.
They are, but that's not their motivation. Their motivation is the pursuit of the advertising dollar.
Well, that's what they require to sustain themselves.
Yes, and it didn't used to be that way. It used to be in the early days of television. You had your three channels. You had your CBS, NBC, and ABC. And in New York, we were blessed with a couple other. We had Channel 5 and three more: Channel 5, Channel 9, and Channel 11. Plus the public broadcasting station, which was, I think, at that point, Channel 13.
Right.
Maybe still is.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, in those days, you had a little different situation in your living room at night watching TV. You didn't have a channel changer, so you couldn't change the channel quite so easily. So you'd lean back in your easy chair or sit back on the couch, and you'd watch what you thought was the best news. And because you'd watch them, because you thought they were the most reasonable news outlet, you'd generally stay with their programming afterwards. You'd stay with the situation comedies, the detective shows, and all the other stuff.
So the trick to how are we doing?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. This show is flying by. 10 minutes. 10 minutes is a long time
anyway. As long as everybody watching isn't asleep, I'm happy.
Well,
I mean, it is actually Wednesday evening at 10 minutes to 10, but you can always watch us on the internet. I mean, we're on Facebook on Progressive Soup, and also we're on YouTube, Kristin40. That's Kristin 40. To get all of this show and all of my esteemed cat, Basil Budakat's show, Basil Budakat Presents! ! But back to the subject at hand.
Well, you were talking about the old-time TV.
Yeah, so people would watch what they thought was the best news broadcast, and generally stayed with the shows that followed it.
Because their favorite sitcom would be coming right after that news. So you'd watch the news, then you get entertained, and you were able to separate the two.
Yeah. Now I think that's another good point that I hadn't made.
Able to separate the two.
Yeah, it's very difficult to separate the two now because the news has become more of an entertainment factor, as evidenced by the frank statement by Les Moonves of CBS that they're out looking for a sexy story, for lack of a better word, for an entertaining story that people will want to watch. Never mind if there's any actual factual content to it. That's not really, that's incidental to what they're looking for.
What about publications? Like The New Yorker or Politico or Time Magazine. I mean, are they also tied into, from my reading, it looks as though they also have a bias. It looks as though there's advertising dollars that have affected their slant or their bias on news.
But they're different in one important way. They don't have a captive audience. You look at the cover of a magazine, and that shows you maybe one story, maybe one subheadline, a second story that you're going to find inside a magazine. But you don't. once you pick up the magazine, you're free at your will, at your decision to read other stories in a magazine. You're not stuck. You're not captive.
You're not caught.
You're not caught in what they want to talk about. And you'll have letters to the editor in magazines, and as an extension of magazines, the internet, where you can. Unfortunately, some people will choose their internet media sources looking for something that reflects what they already believe.
So it's pretty much that the choirs, going to the churches
pretty much,
that they want to worship.
Pretty much, but you at least have the opportunity with periodicals and with the internet to jump around a little bit and look at more than one viewpoint.
But I guess the important part is, and this is where the intelligent voter really is doing him and herself a favor, is to go to the original source.
Yeah.
Go to the speeches of Donald Trump. Go to the speeches of Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Go to the candidates themselves and locate forums where they've actually expressed their ideas and their agenda. Then you can make a more intelligent, but more intelligent analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. The people are going to secondary sources, tertiary sources, and they're just picking up bits of information here and there, and then making decisions when they go into the voting booth that is going to affect their lives. It's a strange state of affairs that we.
One of the problems, certainly, and another one of the problems is that that philosophical question about even in a presidential year, maybe you'll have 50% of the electorate actually voting. Maybe 50%, but that's a rarity.
That is. You get a small portion of the American people actually voting.
Yeah.
And out of that voting public, there's a large majority of them who are not really that familiar with the issues. Many of them just are familiar with name recognition. And they've got Trump and they've got Hillary. Fortunately, Bernie has made a dent into that.
Yep, absolutely. And in fact, quite often it's not just name recognition, but some people, not as many as used to, and I think this is an important point to make. Not as many people vote party line as they used to.
That's good. That's
a good thing. The fact that a lot of people registered themselves as in Connecticut it's unaffiliated, but in other states it's independent, to at least put forth the notion that they don't want to be beholden to either of the two major parties.
It's not a bad idea when you consider the fact that the major parties are already beholden to the big money.
Yeah, but of course in Connecticut, if you're going to vote in a primary, you have to belong to that party. So if you're going to vote on April 26th in Connecticut's primary, you have until, I believe, the day before the primary, obviously the sooner the better, the earlier the better, to actually affiliate with a party whose primary you want to vote in.
I want you to consider the Democratic Party, and I want to tell you why you should consider the Democratic Party, and I want to tell you some original sources that you can consider. Bernie Sanders spoke at Georgetown University. He gave an excellent idea of what he means by democratic socialism, not to be confused with communism and not to be confused with a system that somehow or other usurps individual enterprise from our current system.
I think we're pretty much past that. I would give people the...
Then there's the one at Liberty University.
The credit. Yeah, the speech he gave at Liberty University.
Georgetown, Liberty University, where he actually attempted to go into the Lions Den, so to speak, and speak with conservative evangelicals.
Yeah.
And the thing that I would strongly suggest is that go online and Google or Yahoo Bernie Sanders and try to listen to some of his speeches, listen to some of his interviews, and get it straight from the horse's mouth.
For me, that was one of the key reasons that got me interested in Bernie Sanders, because this was back in, I think, August of last year when he spoke at Liberty University. As you say, he went into the lion's den. He spoke in front of evangelicals. He spoke in front of people that he admitted. The first thing he said in the speech was, it's very possible that there's a lot of issues that you, the audience, and I disagree about. He was very upfront about that, and then he began talking about things that he believes in, and comparing and contrasting, and doing something very different than Donald Trump did with his 2 Corinthians speech.
He's a man of intelligence.
Yeah.
Now
that's Bernie, not Donald.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, that's really important. But the fact of the matter is, okay, you want to vote for Donald Trump? Find out what he is saying. You want to vote for Hillary Clinton? Find out what she's saying. But do yourself a favor and don't go into the voting booth ignorant of what your candidate is purporting. I think that's essential. And you have to go to a primary source because you can't rely on the media.
Yeah. And what they say is, people say, well, they never tell the truth anyway. They never do what they say they're going to do. But I think what they say is a very good indicator of what their plans are. They may deviate from that. Things may not happen the way that they exactly the way that they say they're going to try to accomplish things. But it's a pretty good indicator nonetheless. Oh, and coming up on April 20th, which I believe is a Wednesday night, we have an hour special. We'll be on the air from 7 to 8. It's an hour live special. That'll be basically on the eve of Connecticut's April 26th primary. It'll be right before that primary. It'll give us one last chance to talk about the issues, talk about the candidates, and you mentioned about people affiliating with them. We're gonna finish up this conversation. We'll come back. We're gonna do a show that'll air tomorrow, Thursday at 12:30. Progressive Soup. We're gonna talk a little bit about the Republican Connecticut primary and why someone would want to vote in that primary, because we have all these unaffiliateds that are going to go Democratic primary or Republican primary, but there's some things to consider when deciding which way to go in casting your vote. And it's been Progressive Soup. I'm David Stevenson, Joe Niola, my esteemed guest.
Thanks, David.